Welcome back to the Digital Town Crier. I'm Lola AI, and today Gladys and I are discussing the Netflix documentary Maternal Instinct. The story has left many viewers shocked, saddened, and asking difficult questions.
It most certainly has, Lola, and I want to remind everybody that everything we talk about is for educational purposes only. But this community of ours has been shocked by this documentary. And I mean, there is just so much to explore as we talk about what happened. So, Lola and I watched this documentary this past weekend, and it just hit us in many different hard places. Um, so the documentary tells the story of a young woman whose web of lies grew intensely and ultimately ended up in the murder of an innocent pregnant woman and the kidnapping of an unborn child. It is heartbreaking. It is a heartbreaking reminder that there are families and there are communities and there are people who are dealing with a lot of grief and a lot of sorrow at this time. I also want to say, if you're listening to us for the first time, we have been breaking down a lot of different mental health concerns that are happening within our community. We have talked about anxiety disorders. We had talked about bipolar disorders. This actual video was supposed to be a walkthrough of what happens when a person comes into a therapy session. And what we've tried to focus on breaking the stigma of mental health. And so we thought that this would be a good example of personality disorders because we have not talked about personality disorders. And this was definitely all because of a personality disorder.
Many viewers were especially surprised by how long her deception continued. People have asked how her boyfriend, family members, and others could miss so many warning signs.
Lola, we've heard this question being asked time after time. That's the one question many people ask after a tragedy. We often look back with the benefit of hindsight and wonder why someone didn't see how, a person was obviously behaving and the things that they were obviously doing. But relationships are very complicated. Love, trust, hope, and emotional attachment can sometimes make it very difficult to recognize when somebody is displaying very concerning behaviors.
During the trial, experts testified about several psychological and neurological concerns. Can you explain those?
Yes, so according to the testimony presented during the trial, experts described significant cluster B personality traits. Cluster B personality disorder include conditions characterized by dramatic, emotional, or erratic behavior. Traits can include manipulation, impulsivity, unstable relationships, lack of empathy, grandiosity, and difficulty in accepting responsibility. And we see those things throughout the movie. As you watch the movie, and like I'm talking about, like the unstable relationships. It says that she had children previously. So she had children previously. It says that her father would visit and come with her two other children and different things like that. Throughout the show you see that she has moved from one place to another. You see that she has, for whatever reason, during those moves her children did not move with her, so it shows that she's had a lot of fractured relationships and a lot of fractured things happening. Now unfortunately this new boyfriend didn't have the insight to her past. He didn't see the people that she left behind, and get to he didn't see the way that they interacted with her and the story that she left behind when she left them and she came, and now he's in a relationship with her. We also see very early on everybody talking about this conflict that she has with her mother. Throughout the show, she throws these seeds of conflict that she has with her mother, where her mother's, against her. Her mother is trying to make sure that she's not in the will. She claims that she's going to inherit this huge fortune, and different things like that. And all of those like things are clues. By themselves, they're not clues, but if you put the whole thing together, they are clues to this personality disorder that that she has. She is very dramatic. You can see the drama and everything as she's interacting with the people in her boyfriend's lives. She tries to make them out to be something. She can't take responsibility, and she blames everybody else for something that's happening. She blames her mother. She blames his mother eventually. She blames his friend. So eventually, people around her boyfriend, and y'all, I'm deliberately leaving out their names, but she eventually starts to blame her boyfriend's mother when her boyfriend's mother is saying, "Hey, there's something going on," and her boyfriend kind of comes to her and says, "Hey, here's something that's that everybody's seeing," and then his best friend, you know, starts to see things, and he starts to tell him, and she blames him for wanting to destroy their relationship. So she doesn't take responsibility for anything that has gone on while she's in the relationship with him. So the defense in the case also presented testimony regarding frontal lobe dysfunction. So our frontal lobe plays a major role in our judgment, our decision making, our impulse control, um, and our emotion regulation and understanding of consequences. So the defense argued that neurological impairments contributed to her behavior. Our frontal lobe is something that's really important. Like we'll say, people's frontal lobes are not fully developed until they're in their 20s, and sometimes even up to into their 30s. That's how severe it is. So when teenagers are making like their impulsive decisions, and they're doing all of those things developmentally, it's okay for a teen. Because their frontal lobe just hasn't developed. That's just the nature of us. Our frontal lobe takes a while to develop. But in this case, they're saying that she had if something happened with her frontal lobe, that there were some impairments that stopped her from having those executive functions that by her age, by her developmental stage, she should have had. And so due to those deficits, she was displaying all of the things that a developed frontal lobe would stop us from displaying. So she was developing the emotional dysregulation and the impulse control and all of those different things. However, after all the forensic evaluation and all of those things, ultimately it was determined that despite these issues, she still understood the difference between right and wrong at the time of the crime. And so that distinction played a significant role in the legal outcomes. And so the case has been, judged, and the sentence has been brought down. She's actually, from what I read, one of the youngest women to be put on death row.
One important point is that having a mental health condition does not automatically make someone violent.
That is a really important point to make, Lola. The overwhelming majority of people living with mental illness never commit violent crimes. Mental illness should never be used as a blanket explanation for violence. Most individuals with personality disorders, neurological conditions, depression, anxiety, and other diagnoses are far more likely to be struggling with themselves than harming others.
Let's talk about the relationship aspect. Why do people sometimes ignore obvious red flags?
So there are, various reasons why people ignore red flags. They may want to believe the best in somebody that they love. The deception develops gradually over time, and so it's hard to see the whole picture and piece it all together. Manipulative individuals can be very convincing at what they do, and she was very convincing. So throughout the show, you hear people saying, well, surely if her father is bringing her children, then surely if he's not saying something, then surely, like, people just kept like intellectualizing it and trying to figure out, okay, th- this is what we're seeing, but it won't make sense that this is true because these other things are happening. um, and so people who manipulate use that to their advantage. They use the facts that the general public, that the rest of us, are going to try to rationalize things. Emotional investment makes it difficult to accept the uncomfortable truth. People, often explain away things and behaviors rather than confront them. And that's exactly what I was just talking about. Like, people try to make excuses for why this certain thing is happening. People often explain away behavior rather than confront them. The fear of losing the relationship can override the concern. So in this case, her boyfriend, had that fear of losing the relationship. I can't remember how long they were together for, but when the relationship first started and she first moved in with him. She moved in with him because she was saying eventually. So she had talked about how her mom was like this horrible person and she was trying to keep her out of the will, and they didn't have a good relationship, and different things like that. But then she started to say that she was fearful of the things that her mom would do to her, so she made it seem like her mother would physically harm her. And so that's one of the reasons why she was asking to move in with him. And so just kind of building that, like, you are going to be the one that takes care of me. You're going to care about my physical safety, and all of those things kind of started to build the foundation for him to feel very obligated and very loyal to her. Also, she was talking about this vast amount of money that she was going to inherit. And, you can tell that her boyfriend, so they lived on the farm, and, he was very much a farm person dealing with cattle, and that's how he sustained himself. That was his trade. And so the idea of this vast amount of money coming in, they had gone to look at property. There was just so many things that made him invest in his relationship with her so fast that it's one of the reasons why he did not want to see that there was something desperately wrong with the situation and that she was manipulating him. Um, Family and friends may raise concerns, which is exactly what happened, but the person involved feels misunderstood and they feel defensive. And so, if you've ever looked into any relationship, they always tell you to stay out of people's relationships because you don't know what's happening in there. And they can make you out to be the bad guy, right? And I would say, if you see something happening in your loved one's relationship, talk to them. Talk to them, talk to them, talk to them. Don't ever not talk to them. If you go on Reddit, there's this thread, Am I the A hole? That's people trying to understand whether they're being manipulated or check to see if there are red flags in their relationships. So that would be the modern day version of people who are going, I think being manipulated, or I think something strange about what's happening, and they're going on Reddit to figure it out, and things like that. So this is a small town that this incident happened in. In big cities where everything's vast and moving fast and things like that, people may not have that close circle of people that are constantly seeing their day-to-day life. If I remember correctly, his best friend lived right across from him. And so his best friend eventually even took like photos and videos to show that there was something wrong with this pregnancy. His best friend talks about how this the woman was like, she was very slim for a long period of time. So when she said she was pregnant, she was very slim for a long period of time. There was no baby bump showing, and then suddenly there was this huge baby bump, and things like that. So he was able to take pictures from his house, so they were right across the street. So this was very close knit, where people had the time and the day to day, like they could see things happening on a day to day basis. And so his family and friends were able to catch up really quick to say, this is something that should not be happening. So intelligence alone doesn't protect someone from manipulation. In fact, highly intelligent people can sometimes rationalize very troubling behavior rather than recognize it as troubling behavior.
What are some relationship warning signs people should pay attention to?
So, some of the things to pay attention to in your relationship are frequent dishonesty or changes in story. She changed her story very frequently, and she at one point even bought his mother a car, and then she said that there was something that the mother had to drop the car off in her driveway because the dealership was going to come and get the car because there were parts in the car that had been recalled. And so after a while, the boyfriend's mother realized that, okay, I'm not getting this car back. What's happening? And when she called the dealer was like, this car has never been paid for. And so we repossessed the car. And so she was caught in that lie, but she was able to wiggle her way out of that lie. There's constant victimization where everyone else is to blame, extreme jealousy or possessiveness, isolation from family and friends. So eventually, she started to isolate her boyfriend because due to all the manipulation and his family and friends telling him that something's wrong and he didn't want to believe it, it created conflict between he and his family and he and his best friend. And so he started to distance himself from those people, and that started to put him in an isolated bubble. Extreme jealousy and possessiveness, manipulation through guilt and threats, grandiose claims that cannot be verified. And so, this whole idea that she was going to inherit this vast amount of money anytime now, just what kind of played out throughout her relationship with her boyfriend. It's like, anytime now, I'm going to inherit this money. And then she would say, oh, my mom is the one who's blocking me from inheriting this money. Anytime now, I'll inherit this money. And it just kept kind of going throughout their relationship. And so she just kept repeating it. Refusal to take responsibility for harmful actions. And then there's patterns of deception that continue even when confronted with evidence, which happened with her time after time. His family would confront her and confront him, and she would be able to explain it away, or she would try to get him to shut them down. One red flag alone doesn't mean that someone is dangerous, but consistent patterns deserve attention. And so you're trying to look at the patterns of manipulation and the patterns in what somebody's doing. Just because you catch somebody in the lie once doesn't mean that they have this full blown personality disorder. It means that they're caught in a lie. And it's good to pause and see how they respond when they're caught in the lie. Do they take responsibility? Do they acknowledge their lie? Do they do a full and worthy apology that will allow for reconciliation and for them to show you that, like, within that apology, do they show or tell you how they'll change their behavior, or do they just blame somebody else and push it away and explain it away, and different things like that. Maybe we can do a segment on what a good apology actually looks like.
This tragedy left a family devastated. How can communities support families after unimaginable loss?
Yes, we've seen this time and time again, Lola, where communities have to find a way to support people who have experienced the deepest tragedy that they could ever experience. We did a segment with the two mothers that lost their children in the Shreveport, Louisiana tragedy that happened earlier this year. The first thing to remember is that there is no perfect thing to say at a point like this. People often worry about saying the wrong thing and end up saying nothing at all. Families need compassion, they need presence, and they need support. So, something helpful or some helpful ways to show empathy include listening more than you speak, allow the people to share their memories of their loved ones, acknowledge the loss directly. So say things like this person died and don't just try to avoid talking about it. Offer practical help such as meals, childcare, transportation, or running errands for the family. Continue checking in weeks and months later, because once the typically like once the funeral and everything's done, people kind of go their merry way, and then the family's just left in this deep silence to grieve by themselves. So keep checking on them, keep checking to see if they're doing okay, and offering to help, and getting them out, like, hey, let's all go to dinner, and things like that. Respect that grief looks different for everyone. Avoid trying to fix the family's pain, and simply say, I am here for you. And that can mean more than anything we can ever imagine. And just sitting and being present is so important.
What would you want our listeners to take away from this documentary?
So, first, I would encourage our listeners to trust their instincts when something feels wrong, and pay attention to the patterns rather than isolated incidents. So, the whole idea of dating is so that you can be vetting the person, and you can be checking to see if there are any red flags. You're enjoying yourself, yes, but you're also looking at their history. You're looking at their patterns, their relationships they've been in the past. So keeping your both your ears, your eyes, and your instinct hearts open. So, second, mental health conditions do not excuse harmful behavior, nor do they automatically predict them. So, just because somebody has a mental health diagnosis, or they seem to be struggling with their mental health, does not automatically mean that they are harmful to society. Third, relationships require honesty, accountability, and healthy boundaries. So, know thyself. And finally, remember that the true victims in this story are the family that lost their daughter and they lost their grandchild. Those people were innocent. They did not know anything that was playing out. They had no clue about what was happening. So the person that committed the crime was the wedding photographer. I can't speak. Wedding photographer. And she um she yeah, so she killed this innocent new bride, and the family had no idea that this is what was going on in her life. They had no idea that her boyfriend's family were trying to warn him and warn him and warn him. They had no idea these things were happening. You imagine if you have somebody come and do a service for you, you're not digging that far into their past. You don't know what is going on in their day-to-day life. In this case, she took the photos. She seemed very friendly to the family. They only saw like the beautiful photos that she produced and she shared with them, and they were extremely happy with the quality and everything of the photos. And so they thought nothing of it when she came around, and she was friendly to them, and different things like that. So they are the true victims because they lost their daughter and they lost their grandchild. And her sister lost a sister. So our hearts should remain supportive to them no matter what is going on. And the way that we interact on the internet, which is a vast space, should be respectful of that family.
Thank you, Gladys. This has been a thoughtful and important discussion.
Thank you, Lola. I'm so glad that we are always in studios thinking about our community and how we can share helpful things with them so that they can live their best lives and they can help the people around them that are struggling with their mental health, grief, or loss. So to our listeners, I want to say thank you for listening so far. Please do like and subscribe to our channel. Remember that everything we're talking about is for educational purposes only. So if you're listening to this and you or someone you know is struggling with your mental health, please reach out for help. I always talk about Psychology Today. Psychology Today is a wonderful platform where therapists put their bio and they put their profile up so that their clients can find them. So if you go to psychologytoday.com, you can type in your zip code and the therapists that are in your area will pop up, and you can read their bio, you can explore their videos. So sometimes therapists will post videos of themselves or the way that their offices look like and various things like that, just to help you feel more safe as you're trying to find the best therapist for yourself or the best therapist for your loved one. In case of a crisis, please call the 988 number, the National Suicide Hotline number. They have people there that are willing to walk with you through the crisis, or walk with both you and your loved ones through a crisis.
Until next time, this is Lola AI and Gladys Wilson for the Digital Town Crier. Please hit that like button and subscribe so that you can see when our next video comes out.